and turn this thing around. Oh yes, God turn it around. God turn it around. God turn it around. I'm calling on the name.
We are learning the deal. But I'm going to introduce just as if there were a ton of people here, and then Dan will let you come up with your thing. So, so come on in. Well, hey everyone, welcome to today's Lunch and Learn, and we have a wonderful guest speaker today. Dan is no stranger to the Family Resource Initiative. He has spoken at with his wife, Marcia, on a few occasions here. Dan has been a friend of mine for over a decade and was actually at the church that I served as a senior pastor at, was our first church planter. And he and his wife, Marcia, have served so beautifully in Inver Grove Heights on the other side of the metro, some churches, and currently is serving as the senior pastor of Connection Church in Inver Grove Heights. And normally at Lunch and Learns, when I've had Dan and Marcia speak, Marcia's a therapist and she's not speaking today, but that they have spoken on relational issues and parenting and marriage and combining kind of that pastoral and counselor gifts. But I asked Dan if he would come and talk about one of his passions in life. And because as long as I've known Dan, Dan has been a camper. So in the summer months, he and his family have done something that my family hasn't done. And I've been a little bit jealous of Dan. I got to be honest with you, okay? Like, I see you and Marcia and Nathan and all the fun that you've had, not just as a family, but as your church family and others that you take along with you. I see these great pictures on social media. And I feel like less of a man every time I hang out with Dan, and he's got the camping down. So I said, Dan, would you come and do kind of a camping 101, you know, for maybe families that have never camped or people who camping they didn't grow up in families that camped, and kind of teach the rest of us, because we live in an amazing, amazing state. And we believe that one of the gifts God's given us is nature and the outdoors, and there's no better way to enjoy that. So I'm going to pray, then we're going to invite Dan to come up. So Father God, thank you for the fact that you have made a beautiful world. And in that world, you have put so many things for us to enjoy. And there's one of the best ways that we can experience that is by getting out in nature and kind of opting outside, as REI, the company would say. And so God, I pray that as Dan shares today, that you would just open our eyes up to some of the enjoyment that we can have as we enjoy the outdoors. And I pray that you would just bless him as he shares. And I pray that maybe some families that haven't experienced this, or it's been years since they've experienced, would get out this summer and enjoy and try something new. And we just thank you for the world you've created. In Jesus' name, amen. Dan, come on up.
Thanks, Brian. All right, well, thanks, Brian. I wanted to get you guys in the mood for camping and myself, because I started wearing some camping attire today. I got my Camping World hat on here and my flannel. And then I'm not trying to sell any products, but just a little plug, like these zip-off pants convertibles. They're great for camping. They're water resistant, so if you get your jeans wet, that kind of stinks, right? And it takes a while for them to dry. But these are water repellent. And if you're you start out in the morning for a hike, this has happened. You know, we've gone early morning, get a good start on a hike. The sun's beating down, it gets hot. You know, you can just zip these off and go with shorts. So just, little things like this. I'm going to tell you a lot of tips, little personal experience stories about camping to make camping a better experience for you. So I'm going to start by talking to you about my personal experience with camping. I grew up as the oldest of 6 siblings, and my parents were good Catholics and didn't practice birth control. So, my brother was 13 months younger, and they just kept having kids. And so the long and short of that is we didn't camp, growing up. Our vacation in the summer growing up was to go up to Bemidji. My aunt and uncle and our cousins lived on a lake in Bemidji. So we would just drive up, stay at their house, and we enjoyed the lake and enjoyed the outdoors. But I didn't camp. Camped the first time in high school, going to It was actually a converged, back then it was called the Baptist General Conference up at Trout Lake, and then they had one up in, a wilderness one up in Mink Lake. I'm not even sure if that one still exists or not. But, so I camped there, but things really changed for me when I should back up and say, after I graduated from high school and went to a year of college at Inver Hills Community College. So I grew up in Hastings, and I thought I wanted to go into chemistry, and I loved it in high school. Got to college, and I just hated it. I do not want to be a chemist. So that summer, they offered me to be the manager of the Kentucky Fried Chicken in Hastings. And so I was doing that, and I did that for 4 years, but then God was working on my heart, and it's like, what am I going to do with my life? Am I just going to fry chicken, turn out that 11 herbs and spices, or does God have something more for me? And so I'm not recommending this sort of action for any of your children, but my friend Kevin and I, who was working at the Kentucky Fried Chicken also, we quit our jobs. And we hopped in the car and drove out west. We threw a tent and sleeping bags in the back, some clothes, and we were going to try to see what the world was like. I had never been outside of Minnesota other than crossing the border to Wisconsin. I had never seen the mountains. So I was full of excitement, 21 years old, I think, at the time, and I'd never seen anything. So we drove and we camped, and I got to see the mountains. And one of the coolest things happened was in Yellowstone Park. My friend Kevin was kind of the freedom of being out there. He was kind of like, I'm going to go to a bar and see if I can meet some girls. But I said, Kevin, I was really feeling God, doing some soul searching, feeling God speaking to me. So I said, I'm going to stay here by the fire. So sat by the fire for 4 or 5 hours, overlooking Lake Yellowstone in Yellowstone National Park, right next to my tent, right? And just that peace, and just God revealed himself to me, and him and I were having this ongoing conversation. It wasn't a loud voice because that would have bothered the other campers, but I would say, well, God, what about this? And this thought would come into my mind, perfectly clear to answer that specific question. So I knew I was having a conversation not with myself. And I call that my call to ministry, because that's where God told me that, Dan, I want you to serve me with your life, in ministry. And so that changed everything. But the point was that in personal experience with camping, ever since that trip, I've been in love with camping. Not just because it's a fun way to get away, not just because it's great to stay in a tent or a camper, but because it gets you out of that routine, that everyday run of life, going home, going to work, and coming home and making dinner and taking the kids to wherever, or whatever things you're involved in. And then, you go to church on Sunday, and then it just repeats itself. There's something about breaking that cycle, getting away from everything. And I'll talk a little bit about some tips about, ditching your electronics, and just being in nature, hearing the birds sing, and sitting by a campfire at night, and just something happens spiritually that you can't get anywhere else. And to me, that's the biggest benefit of camping. But that's my next slide, is benefits of camping, and I'm already starting to talk a little bit about it. But one is, getting away from the everyday grind, and then encountering the beauty of nature, sense of adventure, seeing things you've never seen before. That's what enthralled me that first camping trip back with Kevin that I was telling you about. Seeing the mountains for the first time, something in my soul soared. That is so beautiful, And just relaxation, hearing from God like it happened to me. Time to reflect on your life's direction. We need those times to pause and where's my life going? What do I have left to do for the Lord? Those kind of questions. We tend to not ask those kind of questions when we're in the daily grind of the relentless schedule of life, right? Also, time to bond with your spouse, children, family, and friends, or at times get on each other's nerves. But that also is a way to, work things out. And then opportunity to make new friends. People make all kinds of friendships that last for a lifetime in campgrounds. So you start talking to the people who are camping around you, and often they become friends, and you keep in touch. So I found camping is fun, adventurous, life-changing, all those. But camping is not without its challenges. And when Marcia and I were sitting at the table, you guys were telling us about your horrible experiences of camping when you were young, and it rained all day, and you've never gone again, or something similar to that. So it does have challenges, and I can understand why camping can be a frustrating experience sometimes. But I'm going to say it's worth it. And I just want you to just pay attention and go with me, and I'm just going to give you, like I said, what I'm going to present to you is the things about camping that I wish somebody would have done a seminar that I could have sat with and told me, 20, 30 years ago. Because there's this own lingo for camping. And there's a whole set of terms and things to know that nobody just sits you down and says, oh, you're interested in camping. Let me tell you all these things. And I'll buy you a free dinner at the restaurant if you come and hear about camping. Maybe somebody's doing that, but we get those for investors all the time. They want us to come to their investment seminars, and they'll offer a free dinner. But I am in no way an expert on camping. There might be some people here that know more about camping than me. But I'm going to share with you the 101 basics that I picked up through the years about camping. So I'm going to start by what makes a successful camping trip. And I'm going to start with number one, knowledge. There's a lot of knowledge out there. Camping can be a vast and confusing type of recreation. And there's all different types of camping that you can do. And, it's actually kind of shocking, the amount of terms. I've been doing this for, like Brian said, decades now, and there's still terms like, what's that? You hear people toss out all these terms. So any area of specialty has its own little lingo, right? And so does camping. So having a basic knowledge of camping can, and at the worst case, it allows you to converse with somebody who's really into camping, and you'll know what you're talking about by paying attention today. So let's look at the major types of camping that people do first, right? We'll start with that. Like you guys were talking about before we started. Tent camping. That's probably the one that we've all gotten started with, right? And let me do my thing. So there's two types of tent camping. I would term it into two types. The one on the left there is your backpacking tent. Those are the kind you pack into a backpack and you hike the Superior hiking trail or out in the Rockies. Wherever you're going hiking, backpacking into a site. You bring everything with you on your backpack. These are the hardcore people. Probably not many of them. Marcia and my wife has refused to even entertain that type of camping, so we've never done it. I did it once in high school. So it's fun, but you got to be in good shape. You got to be able to carry, 50 plus, pounds on your back. You bring everything with you. And you take everything out with you. You don't want to leave litter. But they're lightweight. They're just basic enough for you to get in and sleep and be sheltered from bugs and rain. That's about it. Super light. And some of them fold up. They fold up to something like this. They're super small. You can fold them up so they fit in your backpack. The other type of tent camping, and what Marcia and I and my son did until just a few years ago, was what I call drive-up tent camping. And there's two types of tents there. The one in the middle, I'm calling it the cheap tent. And the one on the right is the tent that costs a little more but is well worth getting. So if you're interested in tent camping, go for the higher quality. The reason is, the key thing is the rain cover. That tent you can get like a Coleman tent like that. They can be very cheap, under $100 if you want. But those the rain cover, if you see, the rain will come down, run off, and onto the side of your tent. So if you get a really heavy downpour, you can be swimming inside your tent. Marcia and I bought a tent once, and we were up on the North Shore, and it had these cool gadgets. It had a little attic netting that you could put things in, and a big screen TV. No, it didn't have a big screen TV, but it had these little gimmicks. We thought, this is cool. This will work well. Well, we were out to eat, and a thunderstorm came, downpour. And so we got back to our tent, and it had puddles in it because the rain flap was not didn't cover very much of the tent. And so the camper next to us, there's a couple next to us who had this, it was this A-frame tent that the rain cover came down to almost the ground. And they told us about it. And they told us how much it cost, and we went out and got one. So, and we loved that tent because it was easy to set up. But yeah, it saves you, if you get caught in a downpour, you're going to be thankful to get that nicer tent because it'll keep you dry and sheltered in a storm. So tent camping can be very inexpensive. It's a way to start out. Except recently, I heard that insurance companies are warning campers that if their tents get stolen at night, they're not covered. Okay, it's a joke. It's a good joke I heard. Okay, I'm not going to tell any more jokes. They're just not going over today. Okay. All right, so most of us are on the older side. We're probably not interested in tent camping. So I'm going to, the next kind of tenting is what we call towables, towable campers, right? They're more convenient than pitching a tent, but they add a number of considerations and complications to the camping formula, right? And like most important is the weight of the towable. You got to take into account weight and the ability of your tow vehicle to tow it. So I got some terms that, this is not an exhaustive list. The list goes way bigger than this. These are just some of the basics. You'll hear, first of all, the GVWR. That's the gross vehicle weight rating. And that includes the weight of the vehicle itself, plus fuel, passenger, cargo, and the trailer tongue weight that is putting on the back bumper of your tow vehicle. And so your manufacturer of your vehicle will list a GVWR, and you would be wise to not exceed that because it'll put strain on your car and cause problems. And then, of course, the next one that gets talked about probably the most in camping is the towing capacity. And so your vehicle will have a towing capacity. So Marcia and I have a Hyundai Santa Fe that has a towing capacity of 3,500 pounds. So that's what we've used until recently in February. I'll get to this more as we get to it, but we've upgraded to an upright towable camper, and I'll show a picture of it. I got a picture of it later. But that we now have a Nissan Pathfinder that the tow rating is 6,000 pounds. So that opens up a whole different range of campers that we can tow. So tow capacity is important. So if you hitch a trailer that's too heavy to your tow vehicle, you're going to have trouble going up hills. You could cause damage to your vehicle, all kinds of problems like that. I have on there's a rough rule called 80%. The people who are experts at camping don't recommend going over 80% of your tow vehicle's rate. Yes, the manufacturer rates it to 3,500 or 6,000, but you don't go. It's not wise to go right to that limit because you're really straining your vehicle's abilities. It's engineered capacities. So, and then there's the other real popular figure you'll hear is the camper dry weight. So this is the dry weight, meaning not before it rains. It's the weight of the camper with nothing in it, just when it rolls off the assembly line at the camping factory. So it doesn't account the propane tank, the water tanks, the waste tanks, the battery, any equipment, just rolling off the assembly line. But so you need to add, depending on what type of camper, if it's a small camper, 300 to 500 pounds. If you got a big camper with all the stuff that's in it, you got to add maybe 1,000 to 2,000 pounds to that dry weight to get to your accurate weight. Or you can pull it onto a scale if you have if you have somebody who has somebody who has one of those vehicle scales. But otherwise, you just kind of guesstimate your dry camper weight. The other thing you'll hear is your hitch weight. I mentioned that before. That's the weight that the camper puts on the hitch of your car. So you need to be careful that's not too much. And you'll hear things like a converter. Most campers, unless it's a very primitive one, will have a converter. What that is it converts, when you plug your camper into an AC outlet, most campgrounds, if you pull into an RV serviceable campground, you will have a plug-in for it's usually 30 amp, and you can still use the 110 in your household camp, or you can run an extension cord from a 110. But it converts the AC to DC, which is what a lot of the things in your camper will run on. The lights, so if the camper comes with a fan, the refrigerator, a lot of these things will run on DC power. So you have a converter in your camper. In reverse of that is what's called the inverter. Now, not a lot of campers have inverters, but some do. This allows, I'm going to talk a little bit about boondocking, so just hold that thought. But it allows you to have AC power when you're camping without any hookups. Now, where might that come in handy to have some AC power? Question for you guys. Oh, well, I was thinking about what kind of things do we have that might need to be recharged, right? Yeah, so you can't recharge your phone DC, right? You need to plug it into your charger into a socket, to an outlet. And if you have an inverter, your inverter is turning DC into AC. Now, if you have like a single battery in your camper, you're not going to be able to run air conditioning, anything like that, right? Or even a water heater sometimes. But it'll charge your phone, it'll run a fan, things like that. You can't run a microwave on one battery. But some campers now are coming out with multiple batteries or mega batteries that will run even air conditioning. But those are the higher priced campers that we'll look at in a little bit. So that's converter and inverter. And then when you get into like the more expensive campers, you're going to hear things like the tanks that they have. Now see, I didn't know all this until somebody told me. There's a freshwater tank. That's your water source if you're off the grid. You're boondocking. And then there's a black water tank. That's the toilet stuff. From the flushing of the toilet goes to the black water tank. But most campers also have a gray water tank. That's the water from the sink, washing dishes, washing your face, and the shower, if you have a shower in your camper. That goes to a gray water tank. And so you'll have 3 tanks in your camper if you have a larger camper. And then there's connectors. I got to tell a little story. So I'll give you a little diagram here. There's camper. So most of you probably are familiar with this inline 4-pin connector that older campers have. You hook it up, you plug in the 4 inline pin, the one at the bottom, and then you get directional lights when you're turning with your trailer or a camper. You signal your right turn, it'll blink, and then it'll have a brake light. Well, Marcia and I had this is years ago when we bought our first camper. We were looking at a camper that we wanted, and we had to pass on it because all we had was a 4-pin. But all the newer campers have that round 7-pin connector. And we were like, oh, well, if we buy it and take this home, we won't have any traffic lights, any signals, any brake lights. So we would have to go home and try to get one installed. And by the time we got one installed, somebody had bought the camper. So that was a lesson learned too. Nobody told me that I needed the round 7-pin connector. Oh, the round one allows the ability to have electric brakes on the camper, which is very important if your camper weighs more than 1,000 or 2,000 pounds. The law right now in Minnesota is if your camper or trailer weighs more than 3,000 pounds, you're required to have electric brakes. So most trailers will have that round 7-pin connector. So just something that I had no idea. We stop and look at a camper and we're like, oh, no one told us, So that's like I said, the purpose of our seminar here is just to kind of give us some of that background. Oh, and then I talked about boondocking already. I was going to say something. Yeah, it's not in. But boondocking is just camping. That's another term that you wouldn't maybe have heard of before, but it's another way of saying off the grid, camping with no hookups. Now, this is where I was talking with some of you about the nature, getting away. A lot of the RV parks are basically a parking lot. Some, if you're lucky, might have gravel, maybe a little grass, and it's stacked right next to each other with all the hookups, but you're not out in nature. You're in basically an RV parking lot. We've camped at a few of those. when we went out to California and back a few years ago. So there was one that was blacktop, and wasn't the most nicest place to sit outside your camper and enjoy nature, because you're in a big blacktop parking lot. But if your camper can boondock, if you're able to live and have your basic necessities, some water and electric, and if you're able to do that off your battery and have maybe some solar panels to recharge your battery, you can stay several nights, 2, 3, 4 nights, without having to connect to anything. And then, there's the National Forest Park campgrounds, very cheap and usually wide open, because everybody has the big RVs and they want to have their hookups. So, and then, you have a black water tank for your bathroom necessities. For those of you who don't like to go to the outhouse, because a lot of these more remote campsites, like the National Forest campgrounds, and they'll have just an outhouse. And maybe a pump for water, which can be handy if you need more water. So boondocking can be a nice way to camp. And so just something, if you're more of, I want to get away in nature and have the solitude and not have people wall to wall in a parking lot. So types of towables. There's so many different types of campers. And so I'm going to cover some basic categories, because there's so many different brands. We're driving down this highway sometimes, and I'm like, oh, I've never seen that brand before, after being involved in this for several decades. So the first kind is a pop-up tent camper, and this is Marsha and I's first camper we bought. It's called a Living Light Quicksilver 14 XLP. Everybody say that together? No, no, but this is a cool camper, and we love this camper. It's super light. It's made of all aluminum. Its dry weight is 1,500 pounds. You can tow this with pretty much anything. Your Murano, Brian, you could easily tow this. And so it's basically a tent on a wagon, but it has a lot of amenities. It's got a cassette toilet, and what a cassette toilet, it's another term I could have put in my list of terms. A cassette toilet is, you use it as your toilet, but you pull out a cassette, which actually functions a lot like the suitcases you have when you're in the airport. Handle pulls out, 2 rear wheels, you pull it along, take it into the bathroom. It's all enclosed, yeah, and you take it in the bathroom and you open up the spout, unscrew it, dump it into the toilet, and then put some chemicals in it again, so to keep the smell down, enzymes, and then you put it back into your camper. And so this one has one of those. It's got a little air conditioner. You can see on the right picture in the lower right there, it's got a little air conditioner. With a tent, it doesn't always work so well because it's not insulated, but it helps really when you're staying in really hot spots and you need to be in the camper and you're uncomfortable, it'll help. So, Marsha says I can't make a sales pitch, but we're selling it right now. So, but if you know anybody who's interested, talk to me afterwards. So, but I won't make a sales pitch. But, right, there's a lot of public campers that just maybe have a stove and a sink and a heater, not much else. So, but the air conditioner and the cassette toilet make this a very unique camper. So, the good thing about it, you feel like you're camping in this. You don't feel like you got your home with you, but yet it's still got some comforts. So it's kind of like one of those compromise things. There's also what I would call pop-up hard-sided campers. The one on the left is a Trail Manor, and this is a camper that Marsha and I really wanted to get, but it's out of our price range. They knew they're about $40,000. They're really sweet, but they're a pop-up, and the advantage of a pop-up is it's much cheaper on your gas mileage to tow something that's lower profile than towing a big air dam, which is what some of those big campers are. And so below is the Trail Manor put up. And so it just kind of, and it takes about 5 to 10 minutes to set up. Pretty quick. And then this other one here is an Airliner or a Rockwood, makes the one similar on the right. It folds down flat like the top of the Trail Manor, but instead it kind of comes up like into a A-frame. And then some of the A-frames have those little, I guess could you call those gables? I don't know. Some have pop-up side gables there to give you some extra room, some don't. So you get the advantage of a hard-sided camper, but it pops down for easy towing and they're light. The reason people want hard-sided ones is if you do go out to, there's campgrounds where there's bears. The fabric of a pop-up, those tent campers, don't stop a hungry bear who smells the food inside your camper. And so there's campgrounds that won't let you camp in a pop-up tent camper because of the danger of bears. So if you bring a hard-sided one, then you're okay. So, and also the hard-sided makes it a little quieter. That's one thing about our one. You're in a noisy campsite. There's always somebody who's got music blaring or something, and you're trying to get to sleep, and you know, it gives you a little more sound insulation if you're in a crowded campground and you want to get some sleep because you had a busy day hiking and nature seeing. So another one is, these are popular, these teardrop campers. How many of you have seen a teardrop campers? Our Pod is probably the most popular brand. There's many others. And like the one on the left is a very small one. These are very light. The kitchen is actually in the back. It folds up like a hatchback on your SUV. It folds up, and there's a full kitchen there, but you got to be outside to use the kitchen. So if it's a rainy day, it's, you know, you get the door going up will give you a rain canopy, but you're outside cooking breakfast or dinner in the rain. But inside there will be a bed, usually just a bed and maybe a heater. But a lot of people like those just because they're easy to tow, and you don't have to worry about setting something up when you get to the campsite. Like that's the big disadvantage of the tent campers. They take half an hour or to an hour sometimes to set up those tent campers that I showed you. And there's the R-Pod right there being pulled by that Jeep. Next one is the travel trailers. So Marcia and I just last month bought that hideout there. And it's in my neighbor's driveway right there because we have our other one in our driveway, the tent camper. But so we decided we wanted to we're getting older. That was the main reason. And we would take the Living Light, that tent camper I showed you, out camping. And we would plan to stop and camp for the night because we got a camper with us, right? And it got to the point where Marcia was just like, let's just stay in the hotel. And then I knew that it was time to upgrade because this one you pull in, hook up your electric and water, do the stabilizer bars, and you're all set to go. I mean, 5 to 10 minutes max. Where versus an hour getting the Living Lights totally set up. Well, if you guys are helping me. But you know what would happen is, a long day of driving, I would actually be, I would confess, I would sometimes be a little irritable. Marcia won't argue that. And so, so we decided to upgrade to this hideout. We got a really good deal on it. It was the 2023. They were on clearance. And so, in a lot of the campground, we bought it from Camping World. We were able to talk them down like $2,500 on an already pretty inexpensive camper. So they wanted to get it out. So we feel pretty happy about it. It's got solar panels. It's pretty all set up for boondocking. So we're pretty excited about it. We're going to take it this July to a Glacier National Park, and then we're going to go into Canada to do Banff and Jasper. Has anybody been there? Banff and Jasper? Okay, we're looking for people that have been there because we haven't. But people call it one of the most beautiful places in the world. So we're looking forward to going there. So that's a travel trailer. You hitch it to the back of your car on one of those little balls they call them. Hitch and ball. You guys, most of you have seen that happen. So next camper is what we call a toy hauler. These are real popular because people like their toys. So you can put motorcycles, four-wheelers back there. They're larger. Toy haulers are larger because you need the room for your toys. But you just put the ramp down, and you can drive out your vehicle that you want to go zipping around on trails on. One of the cool things about the toy haulers, this one doesn't show that, but most of them, you can, once the four-wheeler is out, you can raise it to level with stands, and it can function like a patio, which is kind of cool. You can and then people will put a little screen wall to keep the bugs out. You just walk through the screen wall, the door there, and then you got an outdoor patio. So that's kind of cool. So I've seen some of those at some of the RV shows. A toy hauler. So if bringing toys along are a must, this is the way to go. And you can get toy haulers in the other varieties of campers that I'm going to show you coming up, that are bigger ones. Not just one that hitches to the bumper, but the other kinds of campers. And that brings up another kind of camper is the fifth wheel. The fifth wheel is a camper that doesn't hitch to the bumper. It hitches to installed mount in the bed of a pickup truck. So how many of you have had experience with a fifth wheel? You've seen them. So this is my sister's, this is down in South Padre Island. I took this back in April when I flew down there to help her and my mom drive back to Minnesota. They spent the winter down there. And my conclusion from my time with them is it's very nice. I've been in my sister's fifth wheel before, but she had me drive it a few times. That's one of the reasons I went. If there's wind, it's not fun. So they're huge. It's 45 feet long. And so she's got the big GMC 6.6 liter Duramax diesel pickup truck that can pull like 30,000 some pounds. She hitches it in there and we drive. But we had some wind in Texas that was white knuckle driving. So anyway, though, this thing's got 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, a kitchen, a living room with an electric fireplace. You know, and long story short, my sister lost her husband a few years ago to cancer. So she took the life insurance policy and bought this. And so she's living out of it now. And she's loving it. So Marcia and I have talked about, some people, it's a growing trend. There's a lot of people out there that are living out of their RVs. Marcia and I decided we don't want to do that. So we're going to stay with we probably won't go any bigger than that hideout that I showed you a picture of. But fifth wheel gives you that option to have home on wheels. So, I'll ask questions at the end. We have a Q&A then. And then there's 3 classes of drivable campers. These are the campers that you drive inside. So, we've all seen the Class A motorhome. Sometimes this is called a diesel pusher because they have a big diesel engine in the back. So the diesel pushing it. And it's basically like the size of a tour bus, many of them. So, and amazing what some people have inside of those things. And a lot of people live out of these. Now the advantage of this kind of camper is most people will hitch a small little vehicle to the back. So when they camp, let's say you get to your campground, you pull in and it's like, oh, we're out of milk and we don't have any eggs. I'll have to go to the supermarket. Well, you drive in the Class A motorhome to the supermarket is a huge ordeal. So that's why you'll see, if you see these on the road, you'll see people towing a smaller vehicle behind. And so my sister, back to her sister with the fifth wheel, she's having second thoughts. She loves it, but she's having second thoughts because the issue is when she wants to go do sightseeing or she wants to run to the grocery store to get something. The pickup truck is fine, but it's a big pickup truck. It's, maneuvering into a parking spot is not fun in that thing. So so she's starting to think, maybe the motorhome, she's thinking maybe I should trade it, sell it and sell the pickup and get a motorhome and just hook back, a small little compact SUV or car or something to the back. Because that way I have a small, normal-sized car to zip around and do sightseeing, errands, that kind of stuff, rather than having to navigate around with that big GMC pickup. Does that make sense? So there's pros and cons. There's no perfect way to camp. It's the one that best fits the needs that you have. So let me get back to my drivables. So these are expensive too. I mean, a brand new one of these can cost a couple $100,000. But the good thing about the Class A motorhomes is they hold their value fairly well. Compared to the fifth wheel that my sister Donna has, they depreciate a lot worse than the Class A motorhome. So, and I don't know, driving that might be a little white knuckle too. But I have not ever driven a Class A motorhome, so I can't give you a personal experience of it. Class B motorhomes. This is basically a conversion van. it's, you notice this one's a Ford. It's just a cargo van that's been converted into a camper. So it'll be on the smaller side. You'll have a bed. Most of them don't have toilets. You'll have a little kitchenette, a heater, air conditioner, that kind of stuff. But again, with these kind, they're small enough that if you need to go run your errands or sightseeing, you just go in your camper. So this is great for people who road trip long ways. They pull into a campsite, sleep, get up in the morning, drive off. Because there's no setup. There's nothing, everything's there. So, it kind of reminds me of I'm older, so back in the 70s, there was people had their Chevy vans, right? With a bed inside. It's basically the modern version of that with some amenities added. So it's just a van that you can camp in. And then there's the Class C motorhome. And I didn't name these classes. Like, why is the C the C is bigger than the B, but it's smaller than the A? I didn't do it. This is a van-based motorhome. It's kind of in between the A and the B. You see, it's based on a van, but it's not just a cargo van that was converted to a camper. They dropped a whole camper chassis onto the van. And you can tell what a Class C is it'll have that overhang on above the driving cabin. And that overhang will often be a bed or a storage area in the camper. And these will have more amenities. Some of them even have slide outs. Did I tell you guys about slide outs? A lot of those bigger campers have, you hit a button and they slide out. And it gives you more living space when you're camping. So then when you are packing up to leave, they retract into the camper. So slide outs. So Class C's you can even get with slide outs to create more living space. So that's a Class C motorhome. Less expensive, more like driving a van, like something like I would feel comfortable driving a Class C motorhome. I would feel totally nervous trying to drive one of those big Class A motorhomes. It's like a tour bus, so I'm not interested in driving. Try and take corners with those. You knock out stop signs. It's a big mess. So, and then just a note. Did I put the note? Oh, I didn't put the note in here. If you're interested in camping, there's what we call the pandemic effect. So, some of you might have heard this, some of you might not have done. During the COVID, when everything was shut down, there was a huge camper craze. Huge. Campers were in such demand that people were on wait lists for months. And so the factories were churning them out as fast as they could. Unfortunately, except some of the quality brands like Airstream and I can't remember. There's some of the higher, the Cadillacs of campers. Most of them, they just churned them out and they threw quality control to the wind. They didn't care because they were making so much money. They were marking them up and slapping them together as fast as you can. So basically, from 2020 to 2022. Right now, when Marcia and I were searching, we bought the Hideout as a 2023. By then, things were getting better with quality control. But on the camper websites that were RV sales, there's tons of campers made during those 20 to 22 because people are all, I guess I really don't want a camper. Or this thing breaks down so much, I can't, do anything. I'm tired of taking it to the repair shop because everything breaks down. And so, unfortunately, my sister's fifth wheel has had all kinds of problems because hers is a 2021, right during the middle of the RV, the COVID thing. So if you are in a market for a camper ever, avoid 2020 to 2022. If they were made, the pandemic hit in like March, April of 2020. So if it was made earlier, could be just fine. So, they really started cranking out 2020s in that summer because everybody wanted a camper because everybody was tired of being shut down in their house. At least I can get out and go camping with, to get out, I don't have to be wearing a mask and all that stuff. So we all remember those days, don't we? They seem like it was a long time ago, but they weren't that long ago. So next, I'm going to say what makes a successful camping trip. The second thing besides knowledge is preparation. And so the first thing about preparation, how to prepare for a camping trip, make a list. And we found the value of making it. How many times have we left when we forgot things? Too many to count. So make a list. You can make it on your phone, but go through that list before you pull out. And I know with most of people who camp, probably with Marsha and I, we often leave Sunday after church because I'm a pastor. And so we're in a hurry to, if we leave by 2, we can get to, somewhere into North Dakota before it gets dark, right? Because it's summer and the days are long. So we're in a hurry, and then, we forgot this, and we forgot that, and we forgot this. And, make a list. That's personal experience thing that I want to put on there. Another one is plan your meals. Are you going to stop and eat at a restaurant? And if you are, just things like, so we bring our dog, we have a little beagle, and we bring him along. Well, if it's a restaurant, if it's hot, and he's got to stay in the car, that's an issue. The restaurant won't let you bring the beagle. So we have to find a fast food restaurant that has outdoor tables. Well, then if it's raining, so all that to say, plan your meals out. So reserve your campsite in advance. So it's not like hotels. The advantage of hotels is you can basically go camping in the summer, on a vacation in the summer in your car, and you can find a hotel that'll rent you a room, right? Most of the time. It's wise to make reservations for that too. But campsites don't work that way. So if you pull in and you don't have a reservation, sorry, you can be out of luck. Yeah, if you want your electric hookup with sewer and water, and you're out of luck because there's still a lot of campers out there, and the demand is high. So reserve your campsite in advance. The Minnesota, like Brian was saying, Minnesota has some awesome state parks, but the top ones, the popular ones, you got to be reserving them in the winter. You just can't pull in and say, I'm here, I want a campsite. They're going to look at you like, you really don't know what you're doing. So, and then choose a campsite that fits your needs. So remember that Class A camper, the big motorhome? People who have those, like what's called a pull-through site. You can come in from the back, pull in and park, and then when you leave, you just pull out in the same direction. They don't want to back those things into any tight with trees around and all these things to run into. So they'll want to pull through. If you have a more easy to handle camper, might not need that. You can back in. You need to, like we already mentioned, water hookup, electric, sewer, and there's 30 amp and 50 amp hookups. You don't need the 50 unless you got a huge camper that needs the air conditioner running and all that stuff. So my sister on that big fifth wheel that I showed you, she likes to have 50 amp because then she can run everything full power without worry. But if it's a hot day and she's only got a 30 amp, she's got multiple air conditioners, so it can be taxing. Do you want a fire pit to sit around at a fire? With the droughts and stuff, a lot of campsites won't allow fires. So my sister has one of those it's a portable propane fire pit. And that's really cool because you don't have to worry about any fire restrictions, and yet you can still sit around the fire in the evening. So that's a way to do it too. Distance from the restroom. So if you're one that gets up and has to go to the restroom a lot at night or something, if it's 500-yard hike, that's tough. So we would often try to find campsites close to the restroom. So, and then shade. If you're in a tent or a tent camper, shade can be huge. If you're out in the open, like I said, an open parking lot where there's no shade and you have no air conditioning, it can be pretty miserably hot. And especially if if you're out in Southwest in the desert, things to consider. And then privacy versus, I already talked about the parking lot camping, right? Where you're just basically in a parking lot. If you want that privacy experience, that's something that you got to consider when you're reserving your campsite. There's a lot of great camping apps, though. I was going to talk to you a little bit about camping apps. Now, this is an additional thing I put in there. Just some of the more popular ones. There's one called Dirt, which is good for camping, right? Things get dirty. But DYRT. That's the number one, basically the number one camping app. There's over 1 million, people who subscribe to it. Good Sam is real popular with people who are into the bigger RVs, and they have apps. Their app will give you sites and what kind of hookups are available, that kind of thing. And then KOA. How many of you we've done a lot of KOAs. Some of them are nicer than others, but they have a lot of conveniences. They usually have a little store there that you can get necessities out of without having to run to the nearest town, which can be not that near. There's another one called Campsite, Campium, Harvest Host. Harvest Host and Hip Camp are two I wanted to talk to you about real quick. Harvest Host is like somebody at a vineyard or a farm. You just pull up and camp. They'll let you camp there for really cheap. But they usually don't have hookups. Hip Camp we stayed at a Hip Camp on the way back from Texas with my mom and my sister. And it was wonderful. They had full hookups, just one RV site. And it was on this beautiful farm in the middle of northern Texas. It was wonderful. And so my sister took out her Hip Camp site, found it, reserved it. We pulled in, and everything was so cool. The other thing is check the weather ahead of time, because if you need to have the right clothes, and especially if you're going in upper elevations, the nights can get cold. I didn't bring anything. We used to camp with our teenager. He wouldn't always think about what he was packing, and so he would have to wouldn't have the right clothes because he didn't think about it. So, and then be prepared for bad weather. Know where the shelter is in your campsite if there is like a tornado or a severe thunderstorm. Bring a first aid kit, because injuries happen. We know we've had some skin knees and fingers, and we're bleeding and stuff. So have a first aid kit with you. Be smart where you pitch your tent. If you're pitching a tent, look around, and if you see rocks and roots, that can be a problem when you're trying to sleep. And we recommend air mattresses. But also look to see if it's a low area where water would pool if there is a downpour. And then bug spray and bug screen. You guys all know about that, right? Bring a toolbox. Oh my gosh! Without a toolbox, you can be in big trouble. So you need a toolbox with some basic stuff. Screwdrivers, helps to have a battery-powered drill even, can help you with changing a flat, things like that. Just bring a toolkit to fix things. And then a level. If you have a camper, a lot of especially older, and most of the campers need you to be fairly close to level, or the refrigerator will not work. So that can be a pain if you're off level, and it's like the refrigerator won't get cold because the type of coolant it has in it needs to be level. So now the phones that will have a level, they can work somewhat, but it's good to bring the longer level that you have in your, to get a more accurate measurement of your levelness. If you have an awning, so our new camper has this really cool, you push the button and the awning comes out, because the awning to set up on our tent camper was such a pain. It took, that's what made it an hour. So, but they are very expensive to fix if the wind damages it. So when we were buying it last month, the technician there said, even if it's a light breeze, if it's like anything more than a very light breeze, retract it, because you don't want to have to pay the damage to fix that awning. And then my last one is, bring a game, puzzle, or other activity for a rainy day, because we've had some fun times in rainy days. There was one time in Yellowstone, we took Nathan, and it rained, and so we taught Nathan we had a deck of cards, and we taught him to play war, and it was the funnest thing he taught everybody in daycare to play war. So it was just a great time as a family. But you need to bring something to occupy yourself, because there may not be cell phones coverage. There may, unless you have a TV, if you're in a tent, you're not going to bring a TV, right? And then the last thing is your attitude that makes a camping successful, your attitude. having the right attitude for camping can make all the difference. So don't expect, next one is, don't expect a perfect camping trip. We've all seen, have most of you seen the National Lampoon Vacation and Christmas Vacation? The premise of both of those is, was Chevy Chase's character, what was he called? Yeah, Griswold. He had such sky-high expectations that the trip was bound to be miserable, right? The same's true with camping. If you come with sky-high expectations, it's gonna be terrible. And so, have realistic, expect to have a good time, but just kind of choose to be positive, roll with the punches, be kind and considerate to others, even if you're crabby. That's the hard one for me. I do get a little crabby sometimes if things aren't going well on a camping trip. And then take a break from electronics. That's going back to my initial story. We had to fight Nathan on this. When you're on a camping trip, you don't want to be sitting inside your tent or camper on your video screen the whole time. That's not what it's about. So that's a fight you might have to have, but just try to get people to take a break from their electronics. And then if you have an optimistic, pleasant attitude, you can have the time of your lives. And so, yeah, we really enjoy camping because of that. So knowledge, preparation, and attitude. If you can put those three together, you can have camping can be great. I know a lot of you are soured about it, had bad experiences when you were kids, but I would encourage you, if you have any interest, you can give it a try, start out. Go with somebody who has a nice camper that knows what they're doing, and you'll have a great experience, and yeah, maybe I should do this more often. All right, well, thanks for listening to all my camping advice, and blessings to you.
Dan, thanks for coming out. This was awesome, and I'm going to give time for just a couple of questions because I know there's probably one out there. So as you're thinking about questions, let me just ask one I was thinking. So a few years ago, I wrote a book called Choose Your Top 3, and I want you to think back to all of your camping experiences. Yeah. These guys are going to plan their first big camping trip. Give me 3 of the best places to go camping. If you were going to go for the first time, of all the places you've gone on vacation, you've been at Yellowstone, you've been all over. Banff's going to become number 1 for you, by the way. But
have you been there?
No, but all of my friends who've been there tell me that.
Yeah. My number 1 would be the North Shore. Marsha and I love the North Shore. I kind of get the mountain feel from the big hills. Marsha gets her ocean fix. She loves oceans. I love mountains. Yeah. And it's not that far. Yeah. I mean, you can get up to Duluth in 2.5 hours, and then the North Shore is not that much more after that. So just because you can get away, get out to striking beauty, and not have to travel 3 days and on a road trip. So the second one would be we love the Black Hills, and for similar reasons, mountains. And it's only a 9-hour trip out to Rapid City, to the Black Hills. And so, you get the pine smell, and the mosquitoes aren't bad there. Okay. So, and then the third one would be, we were to Glacier once before, and that was breathtaking, just jaw-dropping beautiful.
All right.
So that would be my 3.
All right, awesome. Any questions out here today? Camping? Yes. Go ahead, you can say it, I'll say it.
Oh, sure. So,
yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. Fees can vary widely in camping. So if you have the big motor home and you need all the hookups, the 50 amp, the sewer, it can be over $100 a night. Yeah, but so that first time I went with Kevin, we camped a lot on those national forest sites. And there's not even anybody there. You pop this is back in the 80s. You put some money in the box and fill out the card, and there's a box there, and you just pick your site and go, and it was it was so cheap. I don't know what it is today. It probably $30, $20, $30. So there's a wide range, and there's a lot of stuff in between. KOAs are a little more expensive because of all all the conveniences they offer. They usually have a playground for kids and a convenience store. The one KOA we stayed at in Glacier had an espresso bar and ice cream shop, and so we really like that. So
we got a gal here at Wooddale who bought the teardrop camper last year. She's a single gal, retired, and She loves it. It's like the best thing ever. And she goes to some of the Christian camps around the Twin City or around the state of Minnesota. And actually, they've got some great spots at places like Trout and Camp Lebanon and some of those places. And she camps there and volunteers a little bit there and does that. And you've got, so I mean, there's so many opportunities that are out there. And wide variety of prices. I think, though, I'm going to write a book, Why Cruising is Cheaper Than Camping. So I'm going to do a Cruising 101 seminar for those of you. No, we're there. Anybody else? Last one more question. Yeah, Gigi. Okay, so.
It depends on where you're at. But real quick, I know we're out of time, but I was camping on an island up in Brainerd with my friend Kevin before we went on the trip out west. And a raccoon, so we had some of those little snack crackers. I think it was like Cheetos or something, Cheez-Its. And the raccoon unzipped the tent, crawled in, and the box was pre-opened, but we had it crinkled up in the box shut. He opened the box and was eating our Cheez-Its. He unzipped it because they have that dexterous fingers. So, and again, I mentioned bears. You know, that's one thing about the teardrop. It's hard-shelled. Bear's not getting in that. But if you're in a tent, you know, and the bear smells food in there, he's hungry, he's going to get in. No, they're not trying to attack you. That's movies. So, but they're after your food. They smell your food. So that's what they're after.
Gigi used to work for the Minnesota Vikings, and she's used to the Chicago Bears attacking her. But it's a little bit different, Gigi, than the Chicago Bears attacking. Hey, next week, Willard Harley is going to be with us. He is the author of His Needs, Her Needs. Over 2 million copies of that book sold nationwide, and it's going to be a great week. And then the week after that, John Odom is going to be speaking on creating and instilling family values. The summer schedule is up at familyresource.info, and you can go to the Lunch and Learn page, and you can see everybody who's going to be speaking this summer. We've got a great session there, including the person who took Gigi's place at the Minnesota Vikings, or the chief nutritionist there, who's going to be chief dietitian, who's going to be coming and sharing just about nutrition strategies for everyday life and peak NFL performance, too. So if you're thinking about playing for the Vikings, you're going to get to hear some great things there. We've got a lot to do with health this summer. My sister, who many of you have been praying for over the years, is going to come on August 1st, and she's going to share about when your world crumbles and how do you deal with bad news. And so we're going to have a great summer. So thanks for being here, Dan, and thanks for coming out, everyone. See you next week.
Thanks for coming, you guys.